Peter McSkeeter's mother told him not to play outside until after he had cleaned his room, but Peter did not like listening to his mother. He looked to the left and he looked to the right, and since his mother was not watching, Peter ran straight out the door and headed east on Elm Street. Peter was only 10 steps down the sidewalk when a bumbly old bee from Mrs. Rogers' rosebush started buzzing and wuzzing around his head. The bee buzzed beside Peter's ear, made a loop under his arm, and flew between his legs. How did Peter get the bee to shoo? He leaped far away from the bee and landed right on top of a piece of bubble gum. Split, splat, ew! The gum was stuck under Peter's shoe. How could Peter clean off the goo? He pulled to the left and he tugged to the right. He pulled and pulled with all his might until, pop! Peter's shoe flew off his foot, over his head, and disappeared. Woo! But where did Peter's shoe land after it flew? He searched to the left and he searched to the right, but Peter's shoe was nowhere in sight. He looked behind the bushes, in front of a fire hydrant, and then he peeked between the boards of Mr. Foster's fence. And there was his shoe, sitting right next to a swing set. How could Peter get back his shoe? Peter looked to the left, and he looked to the right, and climbed right over the fence and into the backyard. Peter was just about to put on his shoe when he noticed a great big snarly dog standing right in the middle of the yard. Peter tried to hide behind a tree, but the dog saw him and started to run. The dog chased Peter in front of the tree, up a ladder, and down the slide. What had Peter gotten himself into? He looked to the left and he looked to the right, and he spotted a hole below the fence. He crawled through it as fast as he could, but the dog went under the fence too. Peter and the dog ran south on Sassafras Street. They zoomed around the corner and headed west on Walnut Street. Peter and the dog raced between the rows of Mr. Vega's vegetable garden and jumped over his sprinkler. Splish, slip, splat! Peter fell down on the ground and a glop of mud plopped on top of his head. The dog spied a squirrel in a tree up above and forgot all about chasing Peter. Woof, woof, woo! But why did Peter feel so blue? He was tired, wet, dirty, and only had one shoe. He sniffled to the left and he dripped to the right. Peter trudged around the corner and headed north on Nettle Street. As Peter got close to his house, he could hear his mother's voice calling his name. What did Peter decide to do? He looked to the left and he looked to the right, and he ran all the way home. Peter skipped up the steps, went inside his house, and said, "I'm on my way to clean my room!" He cleaned it on the left, and he scrubbed it on the right. He cleaned it until there was no mess in sight.